Elite design, better comfort, more grip. Our new Pure Grip Socks Elite add engineered compression, an anti-blister base, and more grip to keep you locked in. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Something that I think so many modern football boot designs get wrong is a lack of simplicity. But then something like these come around, proving that you don't need all the fancy bells and whistles and the latest technologies to make a great pair of football boots. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas Copa Pure 3 Elite, a football boot that on paper maybe doesn't seem that different from the Pure 2 Elite KT that it replaces. However, despite all of its similarities, this is a football boot that ultimately offers a very different experience in that it actually trends in a slightly more traditional direction. Where instead of the design being focused around the boots being thin, streamlined, tighter fitting, borderline speed boot-esque in a lot of ways, like we got from the Pure 2, the Pure 3 kind of takes us back to the more padded days of the Copa series, which realistically, you kind of have to go back to the days of the 11 Pro to find anything that would be even remotely similar. Where, to be as blunt as possible, there's genuinely nothing groundbreaking about this new Copa Pure 3, but that's kind of the point. It's everything that we've seen before, but also everything that we haven't really gotten in quite some time, which is, I think, what makes it so special in today's current football boot market, with perhaps the biggest downside being the $250 price tag. Where if you're a fan of leather football boots like myself, there's a lot to be excited about with the Copa Pure 3. So if you want to learn the good, the bad, and of course, how they fit and feel on feet, we're going to go over all of those details in today's video. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. And as always, if you enjoy the unsugar-coated, brutally honest content on this channel, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots as we head into 2025. So first things first, the upper, because it's an aspect of this football boot that I think a lot of people will still be very unhappy with and will make people angry because these cost $250. For that amount of money, I also agree these should be kangaroo leather. However, the Fusion Skin upper does still feature calf leather material like we've seen on the modern Copa series for the last several generations. Having said that, and like I've been pointing out for the last couple generations of Copa Pure, this is still really, really soft. Is it quite to the same standard as made in Japan Mizuno? No, not necessarily, but those are also more expensive than these, so that shouldn't be too surprising. But then you can also make the argument that a classic made in Germany Copa Mundial retails for $180, and those are made from kangaroo leather. So I'm not sure that there's a great excuse from the Adidas brand in terms of not giving us that material on these. So definite points against them for that. However, to play devil's advocate, like I've always said on this channel, it's much more important to judge the quality and feel of the leather rather than the type of leather, because there have been kangaroo leather football boots in the past that genuinely haven't felt very good. So there are different quality standards of every type of leather, and as far as calfskin goes, these feel really, really nice. And what I love about them in particular compared to the last two generations of Copa Pure, and really the modern Copa series for quite some time now, is that this has some genuine padding to it. It has that pillowy, airy softness where there is some genuine cushion on the ball, and should you get stepped on, at least that little bit of protection to take the edge off. In a market flooded with super thin, barefoot feeling football boots, the Copa Pure 3 Elite genuinely has a padded feel, which I really do appreciate. And again, something that really sets this apart from pretty well every other option from all the major brands. Having said that, and I think this is another point of contention when talking about the modern Copa series, the Fusion Skin upper does only give you that natural calfskin leather material in the forefoot. From the forefoot back, it transitions into a synthetic material that is mesh based, but as you can see, still has that kind of leather grain finish on the surface with the gold Adidas stripes on either side. And of all the iterations of Fusion Skin that we've had, this is by far the most seamless. You cannot feel the transition or see it whatsoever. If you look at the inside of the boot, I think that's what's really impressive about this design. It's hard for me to show you guys, but it's completely smooth. There are no rough edges. There is no exposed stitching. They are as soft, comfortable, and smooth on the inside of the upper as you can possibly get in the industry right now, which makes for phenomenal comfort. It's definitely more padded in the forefoot than it is through the midfoot, but the material across the entire upper is just super soft, which is exactly what you want from this style of football boot, and they feel very comfortable for it and also very consistent when it comes to touch on the ball. Speaking of touch, another thing that really separates the Copa Pure 3 from so many other football boots out there right now is the grip that you get on the surface of the upper, or should I say the lack thereof, where typically classic leather football boots just have a smooth finish that isn't necessarily slippery on the ball, but it certainly doesn't have that sticky sensation, and these are no different. The upper is, for the most part, pretty much completely smooth. They do talk about a haptic 3D texturing, which you can see there within the gold synthetic Adidas stripes that are just bonded to the surface on both the lateral and medial side, and you can see very faintly within this kind of embossed texturing, there's a micro texture on the surface, but all of this makes for very little in the way of additional grip on the ball. It just feels pretty much smooth on the surface, so if you're somebody that likes to drag the ball along your foot when dribbling and turning, whatever it may be, if you don't like feeling like the ball is stuck to your feet, you're going to love this particular sensation. Otherwise, it's pretty much just on par with what you would expect from a more traditional natural leather football boot. Across the top of the foot, you'll find a design element that isn't necessarily something that we've never seen before, but if you relate it back to the Copa Pure 2, it kind of combines the two different top-end Elite options in the Pure 2 Elite, which had a more traditional U-throat construction and standalone tongue using a single lace hole setup, and then of course the KT variation, formerly known as the Pure 2 Plus, which of course had the one-piece upper construction with the elasticated prime knit tongue. This still gives you that traditional single lace hole setup in what is a central lacing system that runs nice and deep, but then you have, instead of a normal tongue, an elasticated prime knit one where it's connected basically just below the lace holes of each individual position, so it can't move from side to side, and it effectively does create a one-piece enclosure as a way of giving you a little bit of padding and some protection against lace bite, as well as just generally more cushion across the top of the foot. There's a little insert of memory foam at the bottom, which I really do like. Personally, I wish it would have went all the way up, but I understand why it only goes halfway, and that you do want this top part of the tongue to stretch a little bit more for the sake of getting your foot in and out of the boot a little bit more easily, which for a boot with a one-piece upper, technically, these are really easy to put on and take off, which I very much appreciate. And again, for the sake of keeping the boot as traditional in feel as possible, I think this is actually a very smart design in that it's still a modern twist, but it doesn't necessarily make them feel like a spaceship, for lack of a better word, I guess. You'll also find, like a lot of more traditional boots have, they have actually given you that extra lace hole at the top that personally I don't feel the need to use, but if you do find that you need that little bit of extra lockdown, there's maybe just a little bit of slippage depending on the shape of your feet, you do have that option to just have it grab your foot a little bit deeper and drive your heel down and back into the boot. So I love the fact that they have included that. Moving to the rear, you're going to find what is ultimately a simple low-cut construction, but definitely with a bit of a modern twist in that, unlike the Copa Pure 2 Elite, which had a very chunky rear section to the foot, this one has been streamlined quite significantly, where there's no extra padding along the sides that you don't need. It's generally very flexible at the top of the opening, which typically results in really good comfort, but you still have that internal structure with the heel counter at the back. It's raised a little bit higher on the back, but again, really, really soft, so that's not necessarily an issue. And then the heel lining material is a soft microfiber with targeted padding within the back, which you're going to find on pretty much all the top end models from Adidas at this point. This, however, I think is their best implementation of this particular design, where it just grabs your heel so nicely and generally just feels super comfortable straight out of the box. And then the insole fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features a very straightforward mesh liner on the surface. Nothing fancy there whatsoever, but it does have a really nice insole in that it's an ortholite foam pretty much all the way through. You can see there's some red section and a blue section. I'm pretty sure they're all the same foams. It's possible that the red foam is a little bit firmer than the blue, but all in all, it's thicker than what you're going to find from most insoles on the market and generally just feels really nice underfoot. Which brings us to the base of the boot, where finally Adidas have decided not to cheap out and just slap on a sole plate and stud pattern from a previous generation football boot on the modern Copa series. The Copa Pure 3 Elite features a dedicated comfort frame design, which is specific to this particular model. It's made from a Pebax material that technically has a stiffer part and a softer part to the overall construction. I'm pretty sure you could say that about almost any sole plate, so I'm not sure why that's part of the marketing material. Nonetheless, the emphasis here is more so on flexibility rather than responsiveness, all in the name of overall comfort, and that's definitely how it feels. It's not overly flexible. It's certainly not a soft feeling sole plate. It has nice rigidity through the midfoot and heel, but if you're looking for that super stiff, again, speed boot sensation, that's not what you're going to get from this. This feels about as traditional a sole plate can feel without feeling old school, if that makes any sense. And then as far as the FG stud pattern is concerned, again, they have not gone and reinvented the wheel here. We have a little bit of an interesting variation from Adidas in that it's very rare these days that we get 4 studs on an FG stud pattern along one side of the forefoot. It's almost always 3 and 3, but you can see you have 4 studs along the outside, with the base one closest to the midfoot on both the lateral and medial side being a blade. Everything else is a conical stud other than the support one in the middle. And as you would expect, based on how this looks, it's relatively traditional in terms of feel. Plenty of bite because of the narrower profile of the rounded studs, but still that freedom to twist and pivot. Pretty much a direct answer to what Nike offers from the Tiempo series, and typical of what you'll find from a lot of football boots in this category. It performs well, the sole plate feels great, and it is a very nice change for the modern Copa series. And then there's the weight, where obviously this is not a football boot that is focused on being as light as possible, but at the same time, it's coming out in 2024/25, so you obviously don't want it to be super heavy either. I thought for the sake of comparison, it's always interesting to compare it to the previous generation. So this is the Pure 2 Elite KT, the same retail price, $250 for these, $250 for these, both in the same size, 9.5 US. Let's see what the weight difference is. Starting with the older Pure 2, they weigh in at 8.1 ounces, the equivalent of 229 grams. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the Pure 3 Elite, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.9 ounces, the equivalent of 223 grams. Where despite the more padded upper and arguably more old school / traditional design, the Pure 3 actually manages to shave 7 grams over the much more, dare I say, high-tech Pure 2 Elite KT. I think this is mostly down to the new sole plate tooling, given that, again, this technically came out in 2017, but they were still selling it on their latest products in 2024. A little bit ridiculous if you ask me, but it is what it is. Nonetheless, if you're looking for a lightweight feel, but still want that old school, soft padded leather touch on the ball, you're definitely going to get that from the Pure 3 Elite. They're a lot lighter than they look. On feet, despite still being a fusion skin upper, from a shaping and fit perspective, the Copa Pure 3 pretty much disregards the last several generations of modern Copa, where technically it's built on the same last as the Predator 25, which is interesting because I really don't think that they fit and feel like the Predators in any way at all. Yes, they're snug through the midfoot, as are the Preds, but generally because of the change up in materials as well as just overall construction and the deeper central lacing system, they just have a different feel. Where if I had to relate this back from a shaping perspective to another Adidas football boot, they kind of remind me again a little bit of the 11 Pro days, where they fit snug pretty much all the way through. There's still definitely some decent width through the toe box and forefoot, where it has that nice rounded shape where the boots fit snug, but because of how soft the material is, and maybe not lacking in structure, but just being so much less stiff than some of these thin synthetics and textiles that we get on modern football boots. These have that little bit of, let's call it, breathing room that I think just feels so refreshing, and at the end of the day, very, very comfortable. Forget about after break-in. Out of the box, I would argue that this is easily the most comfortable football boot currently on offer from the Adidas brand. Whether it's the calfskin leather in the forefoot and toe box area, or the synthetic mesh-based material through the midfoot, the prime knit across the top of the foot, every aspect of this football boot is super soft and comfortable against your feet. I love the design of the heel. It's slim in such a way where it feels like it hugs your foot really, really closely, but has all the necessary padding where it doesn't feel like it's squeezing in a way that it's uncomfortable or harsh. They feel pretty much as soft all over as you're going to find from a modern pair of football boots these days. And when you pair that up with this new comfort frame sole plate that is definitely more flexible than what we had from the Nemesis torsion frame sole plate on the previous generation, the boot as a whole just feels like it moves very naturally with the bend of your foot. From a width perspective, while they definitely do have a snug overall fit through the midfoot, there's pretty decent width all the way through on these football boots, and when you do factor in that the leather at the front is going to stretch, this is a boot that I think will be a great option for most foot types. If you have extremely wide feet, you might need a little bit of time to break them in, but in general, I think these are going to work well for just about everybody. And as far as sizing is concerned, they do run a little bit longer than the F50s and the Predators. I would say no more than a quarter size, to the point where I am still wearing them in my usual size 9.5 US and don't really feel the need to go down half a size, where my advice would be as follows. If you like your boots snug and you're already wearing them snug, true to size is probably okay, whereas if your boots already have that little bit of extra room in them, going half a size down in the Copa Pure 3 Elite might not be a bad idea. So in conclusion, I'm super impressed with the Copa Pure 3 Elite, and I'm really happy that Adidas have taken this boot back in a more traditional direction. Where obviously if you still want something super old school, you do still have that option of the Copa Mundial, which at this point now retails for $180. But what I think has been missing from so many modern leather football boot interpretations is that little bit of softness, is that little bit of padding, having cushion on your foot when making contact with the ball, in my opinion, feels great. Having a barefoot feel is also awesome, but I like the option of having that little bit of padding, and the Pure 3 Elite finally brings that back to a modern pair of football boots. It's definitely fair to argue that the $250 price tag is on the steeper side of things, and maybe as a less expensive alternative if you're looking for that natural leather material and more padded feel, the Copa Gloro 2 at $100 is definitely worth a look. But in terms of fit, comfort, styling, and just general ease of use, because these are legitimately a pair of football boots that you can just slip on your feet and immediately be comfortable, the only options that I can think of that are similar in feel and actually better cost significantly more. The made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2 is definitely a better quality leather football boot, but as an overall package, these definitely stand out to me.